Hi, everyone. Welcome back to your Frequency Shift podcast, where we dive deep into real conversations that every person, parent, and partner needs to hear. And today we have something truly special lined up for you. So, whether you're a seasoned parent or just stepping into this wild ride or wanting to become a parent, there are always new challenges around the corner. And trust me, I think we know firsthand how overwhelming it can be to juggle business and family and personal growth and wanting to break cycles and stay connected to yourself and etc. etc. And this is why I am beyond excited to introduce our guest today. So before we get started, one of the questions I always get asked is, how do I start, or where do I start with things? And as you'll see within this episode, a lot of it comes back to starting with yourself. And going back to that, we have a free 5-day Master Your Mindset and Your Emotions workshop that is incredibly insightful and just gives you tools that so you know where to start within yourself. So back to our topic at hand today. So we have not just any parenting coach. We have Annaliese Erin, who is a certified parenting coach and trauma coach who is dedicated to help parents build stronger and more connected relationships with their children. So from fostering emotional intelligence to guiding you through really tough conversations, Annaliese has been a part of families' lives everywhere and transforming what the dynamic looks like. And she's been a part of our family dynamic and transforming that for the last couple of months. Now, if you're thinking, I've got this parenting thing under control, think again, because Annaliese offers not just advice, it's about tapping deeper into that understanding to empower both you and your children so that you can unlock a whole new level of connection within your family. And for the last couple of years, I've been diving really deep into our content. And I have to say that the insights that you bring are invaluable. So, whether it's been strategies to navigate tantrums or building trust, Annalise, I've really appreciated your approach because it's not just practical, but it's sustainable strategies that really work for real families. And for those of you who are wanting to learn more, please check out her website. We'll leave all the details below. But stay with us because in today's episode, we're going to unpack some of her game changing strategies. So without further ado, let us welcome Annaliese Erin to your Frequency Shift podcast.
Just to start everything off, if you can just share a little bit about just who you are and how you essentially got into the work that you're in at this moment in time.
Yeah, sure. So, who I am at the moment is a mum, a partner, and I'm also a stepmom. So, we have a blended family of 5 children. We have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, 2 5-year-olds, and a 6-year-old. So, we have a lot of challenges along the way as we go. The way I actually got into this was, interestingly enough, I had decided that I was not going to be a parent. Um,
Ah.
and then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I found out I was actually 6 weeks pregnant. And so that really threw a spanner in the works. And because I had been raised quite religious, in my mind, there was really no other option other than to have this baby, right? And I just remember spending the first half of my pregnancy sitting there kind of just feeling stuck, like I can't parent. I don't know how to be a parent. What I did know is looking at my childhood, it was full of what I believed was a lot of disconnection. Um, and a lot of, I felt really misunderstood as a child. And I knew that I didn't want my child to feel that way. But you grow up with a certain way of parenting, you don't see other ways to parent. And then one day, I remember my daughter's dad said, "Oh, it's fine. I'll just do all the disciplining and I'll just do all the parenting and you just have to feed her." And I remember thinking like, hang on, I don't want that either. don't want to be
Yeah.
the backseat parent. And I remember there were times when I was a child that my mum would say things like, just wait till your dad got home. And I used to think, like, I just thought it was a cop out. And I remember thinking, I don't want to be that parent. I want to be involved. I want to know what to do. And that just led me down to, I just started Googling how to be a parent, how to be a good parent. Um, what should parents do when this happens? And one of the things that was really important to me was learning how to regulate my emotions, because I grew up with a parent who yelled, and I know how much that affected me growing up, and I didn't want to be that. So eventually, I got so obsessed with the topic that I ended up studying it and making videos on it, and here we are today.
Wow. I resonate so deeply with that, because I mean, we were quite young when we had our kids as well. And I think for us, both of our parents like wanted to, because we were so young when I felt pregnant with Noah, they thought, okay, let's swoop in and take over and do it how you guys were raised. And instinctually, there was this thing within both of us that was just like, no ways, we're not doing it that way. And I don't want to continue the cycle of what everyone has been living. And it's so interesting how it starts that way.
It's kind of like you're pushed up against the wall and you can't express, well, in our case, sometimes you just can't express what it is, but you know there has to be another way of doing this. And then you're looking for that model. You're looking for, like, is this even rational or reasonable in some way, shape, or form? Like, is there anyone that's been parented or had a different experience compared to yourself? And that's kind of what got us into just self-development.
Yeah.
To be honest, just realizing like, ooh, this is a major area that needs to be looked at differently.
And it's so interesting how, when you're growing up and before you become a parent, and when you don't know any differently, you don't think that that there might have been something wrong, or I think when you actually become a parent and when you're raising your children and you see these little people wearing your face to a certain degree, it's like you can sort of see how it's almost like, whoa, okay. As a child, I can forgive you growing up in that house, but as a parent, I don't understand. There's and I think that's the driver for a lot of people to break the cycle, but we just don't know where to start or how to start. And I think sometimes the people will look at all the information online and be so overwhelmed with all of that, and yeah. It is, like I said in the beginning, parenting is a wild ride that will show you who you are, and not just like who you are, but who everyone else is around you. It's almost like it's this catalyst that takes up these rose-tinted glasses. And when you're asking yourself the question of like, how do I do this in a better way? How can I become better? But people just don't know where to start. And I can say this from like a very personal note. As much as we've been working in the personal development space, parenting has always been like the most vulnerable part of the most vulnerable journey for myself and for Nick as well, because it exposes you
everything. It's like the underbelly of like why you are the way that you are, and no one necessarily wants to look at that.
And do you like who you are and why you are the way that you are, and would you like the same for your children?
So in saying that, just from your experience, having sat on the side on the side where you're at, where you're observing so many different parents and individuals like looking for answers in this space. What do you find are the most common themes that parents are struggling with nowadays?
I would say there's two really common themes. The first one is always emotions, like how do they cope with their own emotions, and how do they cope with their child's big emotions? Because we weren't taught how to do that. And the second one is one of the most common questions I get, or people coming to me, is like, why doesn't my child listen to me? Right, those two ones are very much intertwined, and it's almost like they come with the other one. And so I believe that when it comes to like regulating your emotions, it's hard because we haven't been taught. You know, like I didn't even hear that sentence, regulating your emotions, I swear, until I was like 30 years old and I was doing my own research. I thought people they were born calm or they weren't born calm, and I was not born calm. So that was my belief.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, or the other thing is that it's your fault if they're not calm. So that whole codependent space of that you're responsible for everyone else's emotions around you. So
yeah, absolutely. And so when it comes to trying to learn how to regulate your own emotions, for me the first step is learning how to look internally so you know how you feel. Because so many people come to me and they say, I think that I'm fine, and then out of nowhere I'm yelling at my child, or I just explode. And they're like, I go from 0 to 100. And to that I always suggest set alarms on your phone throughout the day, even if they're silent or they're just on vibrate. And when that comes up, I want you to focus on, how are you feeling internally? Are you a little bit stressed, tense? Are you feeling good? Just check in with yourself and then do an actionable step for about 30 seconds to a minute to get yourself back to a calm base, whether that's taking a few deep breaths, whether that's, getting up and going outside, whether that's telling yourself, I'm safe, I'm okay, and just talking yourself or reassuring yourself into a calmer place. And you want to be doing this multiple times a day when you're calm, because you're not going to be able to use that tool until your body recognizes it as familiar. And only then, when it recognizes it as familiar, because you have consistently practiced it, will you be able to bring it into really triggered moments. So it's really turning inward and noticing, when I'm stressed, my shoulders are tense, or my stomach feels queasy, or my chest feels tight, or my face is hot. You have to notice how you respond to situations. And that means stepping out of autopilot and checking in with yourself internally. Now, when it comes to the second problem of, why doesn't my child listen to me? I find that a lot of it is actually brain development. They don't really understand how a child's brain works, and it's not the same as how ours works. A child's brain is very immature. They do not have impulse control. They don't have emotional regulation. They struggle with memory, focus, and attention. And that part of their brain doesn't even start developing until they're around 6 years old. And we're trying to get like 3-year-olds to calm down, and it's just, we're asking too much of them, right? And so when it comes down to getting them to listen, you have to understand, because their brain is so immature, they're going to be easily distracted. They're going to be impulsive. And so we work with it. We have to remove the distractions. We have to get in close. We have to get down to their level. We have to make eye contact. We have to give the request. And then if we see that they're struggling, we take their hand and we guide them to what they need to be doing. Right? Now, if they're a little bit older, you can probably allow them to go off and do things on their own, but just understand, if you catch them off playing or doing something completely different, they're not trying to ignore you. They don't want to not listen, right? Nobody chooses a path that comes to, that ends with their parent yelling or punishing them. Their brain has simply got distracted and they haven't been able to get back on track, and they need your help. They need you to take their hand and say, hey, you really want to play, I understand. First, we need to do this and come back to that space. And I think for you to, as parents, to be able to do that, we have to make sure that we're not taking their actions personally. Okay.
I was
Because
stressed about
if we take it personally, like, they're not listening to me, they're ignoring me, they're doing this on purpose, we're going to react from that place. And it's not about them doing things to us, it's about their brain development. And as they get older, they'll be able to listen better and be able to do things on their own.
With that exact point, that's something that I used to struggle with deeply. I felt
Yeah.
like my children had a vendetta
like they're
against
out
me.
to get you.
Like, how can I press this button like really well today and get the response that I want from dad or
Yeah.
mom?
But like kids
Yeah.
are not malicious,
Mm.
and this is the thing. And you know, now having another baby, I always get asked, oh, is she a good baby? And it's the same thing. It's like a baby is not going to go out there and think, oh, I'm not going to make my parents sleep tonight, I'm going to keep them awake the whole night,
Yeah.
and I'm going to cry, and I'm going to do all these things to make their life exceptionally difficult. So like nobody goes out to do that. But I think sometimes when our kids grow out of that like baby phase, we immediately slap this thing on of, oh, you are a free thinking adult and you need to follow every instruction that I have, because it's the same thing that was done to us with no explanation as to why. It's just because I said so, you know?
Yeah.
So
And there's this really like great expectation that we automatically apply, as that was the norm for us. You just had to figure things out. And I think this ties beautifully into the next question, which is emotional resilience, because that's one of the components that I don't, I think there was either a thing of dissociation that had to take place, or you just had to put blinders on and you just focus on listening and executing. How do you start to establish that within your kids, and I'd even say within yourself, in a healthy manner, if you have maybe come from a background where there was this expectation on how you conduct yourself on not only a physical manner but also in an emotional plane as well? What does that look like, and how would you start with that process, so that when emotions do arise, that there's a better understanding? Like you said, you only heard of emotional regulation at 30 plus, like that becomes the norm. That's an understanding, like, oh, okay, I get this. I can move from this space of dis-ease.
So first of all, I believe it starts with the parent being able to be resilient with their own emotions, because if you don't feel like you are capable with uncomfortable emotions, you're going to be extremely uncomfortable with your child's emotions. And when that happens, we usually do one of two things. We try to appease the child and just give them whatever they want to make them stop, or we do the opposite and we try and shut that emotion down by just, I've got to stop this, and we end up yelling and reacting. But emotional resilience is almost like the opposite of what we've been taught in this world. We've been taught that if we can repress our emotions, then that's, we're being emotionally resilient. It's actually just emotional avoidance. To become resilient at something, we have to learn how to go through it. We have to work our way through it, which means allowing the emotion, right? It is our job to allow the emotion and hold the boundary. Okay. So it's like they can cry, they can be upset. However, no, they cannot hit. No, they cannot destroy property. And no, they probably still won't get their way, right? You can't have a cookie before dinner, right? We're just about to eat. And the more you are capable of holding boundaries and staying calm, the more your child learns A, that it's a safe place to let out their emotions, and B, they're watching you. They're watching what you're doing. And and as time goes on, they're learning mum or dad is not afraid of my emotions. So I don't need to be afraid of my emotions. I just need to let them out, and then we become solution focused. Okay, now what do we need to do? Right? We need to get you up at the table because it's time for dinner. And so it comes back down to you being feeling capable and you being emotionally resilient and the parent being able to connect and hold the boundary. And over time, as your child grows up and that's a consistent action that you take, then that they will become emotionally resilient. But it starts with the parent.
It's so interesting you say that. I mean, in somatic experiencing therapy, there's something that they say that the goal isn't to have a calm nervous system, it's to have a dynamic nervous system. And I think it's the same thing here. It's not about being like deadpan and all like one tone with things.
Stoic.
Yeah, it's about being
Yeah.
able to like move with whatever's happening in this space and to allow your kids to feel safe in that. Because sometimes I think, you witness how big it is within your children. And then it almost triggers this response within you of like, oh, no, that's like not okay. And so that's why I think a lot of parents try to put it away because that's what you learn throughout your own life. And this is why, I mean, I said like parenting is an extremely vulnerable journey that exposes all the things that you haven't looked at. And I mean,
if you allow it.
yeah, it can be such a beautiful and like healing journey that you can all go on together, depending on what type of family dynamic people want. And I think if you're listening to this, the biggest thing is having a deeper connection with yourself and your children, and trying to continue that cycle versus the one that we've all been on before, or majority of us has been on. And I also want to say, on the note of the brain development, it's so interesting because that was mind blowing for us to listen to when you said it, because I mean, when you're 26 and onwards, or 27, when that part of your brain does develop, it's almost like a light switches on inside of you. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm this, and I think like this, and I like this. And so, and I still don't listen. As a 32-year-old, I still don't listen. So I think it's difficult sometimes when we place expectations that we don't even have for ourselves on our children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the biggest things that really helped me while we were working with you was just recognizing my children as they are, because there was almost like this realization of, I'm not any different from who I was when I was a child. Like, yes, I've matured. Yes, my perspectives have shifted. Yes, life has lifed, but I'm still myself, and my children are still going to be themselves. And it's important to honor that versus to try and like make them these employees who listen to every single thing and execute, and because that's not what you want. And I think a lot of parents have very strong-willed, deeply feeling children these days, and they don't know what to do with themselves or the children. And so that brings us to the next question, which is, how do you respond to emotional outbursts? Or because I think sometimes people will ask the question of, how do you deal with like rudeness or that sense of entitlement or all of it? But I think it starts off with just like, how do you respond to the emotional outburst, because it's asking for very similar things.
So with the emotional outbursts, again, we want to start with checking ourselves internally, because if we aren't emotionally calm, we're just going to escalate that situation, right? Anything emotional has to be met with empathy and validation, and then we correct the behavior. Okay, so that might sound like, wow, I can hear that you're angry. Okay, it's okay to be angry. We don't need to hit your brother, right? So we go into trying to see them like we want to keep in mind that it's our relationship with our child that will influence them. And therefore, we have to come from this place of trying to understand where they're coming from. And then step into, okay, how do I validate the emotion? Validating the emotion is not accepting the behavior. Okay, so we're coming in, we're saying, I can see that you're angry. I can see you're upset. This is really hard for you. And when we do that, our child feels seen, they feel heard, they feel safe. And it's only when they feel that safety can their walls come down. And then once we get them calm, you might have to do some reassuring. You might need to give them a hug. You might even need to give them some space if they are resisting all types of you trying to connect with them. And then we come in with solutions like, okay, your brother took your toy and you want it back. And instead of hitting him, we can say, please give me my toy back. And we can offer him another toy that we're happy for him to play with. Right? So we're teaching them skills, and we're teaching them to replace we're giving them an alternative behavior, one that's appropriate. We're giving them the words that they need to communicate what's going on for them at the same time. Because I don't believe that many of us were raised like that. Most of us were raised with don't hit. That's completely unhelpful because I've still got this emotion and I'm still angry, and you're just telling me to do nothing about it. I have to know what the steps are.
So with that, I mean, many a time I know that I defaulted towards more of a reward punishment process within that. I mean, context wise, with regards to the outburst, how would that maybe tie in for individuals that, or parents that's been their go-to? Like, I'm going to take this away if you're acting like this, or I'm going to give you this if you act in accordance to these expectations and ideals that I've set for you. How do you maybe just open up that mindset to be like, oh wow, I can see the importance of maybe breaking this down and simplifying it, and actually teaching, these really important skills on how to connect, how to communicate, how to validate, how to share, how to, express yourself, versus feeling like, if I do feel this way, I know something is going to happen. I'm either going to get something, or if I do act this way, I'm going to get something, or something's going to be taken away from my space.
So the reason that I don't like rewards and I don't like punishments is because all behavior comes from an emotion, and the reward and the punishment is completely overriding or overlooking the fact that there is a reason that your child has behaved this way. There is an emotion that has pushed your child to behave this way. And rewards and punishments don't even acknowledge that. It's just like, behave this way and ignore your emotions. But if we could ignore our emotions, then we wouldn't need to learn how to emotionally regulate. What happens is that, our emotions override our thinking brain. Even as adults, this happens. And so we have to come back to teaching our kids how to cope with emotion, which comes back to that emotional resilience. We have to be emotionally resilient. We have to allow the emotion. and then they come in with, hey, unless you want to be taking things from your child when they're 17 and having like an actual physical fight with them, because they're gonna get bigger, then we need to show them what to do next and how to cope better with the emotion, right?
That's a valid point, and I think that would tie into the next part of the question, which would be, when you're looking at deploying effective communication, what if you're sitting in a position where your child is maybe on the spectrum, they have ADD or ADHD, or they're not neurotypical, they're neurodivergent, or just a HSP or
Like a
deeply
highly sensitive
person, child.
child.
How would you go about moving through that process? Would there be any nuances or shifts with what you mentioned before? How would you approach that?
The only thing that I would change, and I don't even know if I would change it, but I would be a lot more aware of it, is that you want to meet your child exactly where they are, right? And that is, if they are showing you the behavior, then they're currently struggling, right? If don't get caught up in this, they should be able to do this. They're showing you right now that they can't, and they're showing you right now that they need your help. And I talk to so many adults who, they were diagnosed with these conditions at, 30, 40, 50 years old, and they've had a whole lifetime of just not feeling good enough because their parent just continually tried to wouldn't meet them where they were at. They wanted them to be better. They wanted them to be more regulated, and they could not do it because of their neurodiversity, right? And so we always want to come in again with empathy. We come in with a validation. We allow them to have their emotion. We hold the boundary when it comes to like physical destruction. And then we become solution focused. What can we do? You might even, if your child is old enough, you might be able to ask them the question, how do we meet in the middle here? Okay. And over time, they'll have their own suggestions at times, as they get older and older. But you have to meet the child exactly where they're at in that exact moment. And keep in mind, one day they might be able to act a certain way. And the next day, maybe they didn't get enough sleep. Maybe, they've had an argument with their sister or brother, or maybe they've had a bad day at school and they can't do what they could do yesterday. Again, you're going to have to step into meeting them where they're at, exactly where they're at there, and be flexible. Flexible parenting is basically, that's the goal.
And another tool that you gave us was the I wonder, meeting things with curiosity. And that's been very helpful, especially with our youngest, who he is very intense in his expression and all of it and how he feels it. And that was very overwhelming for Nick. And for me to witness Nick being overwhelmed, because I was like, I need to fix this. But just coming at it with, I wonder if there's this, or I wonder if we could do, because it allows for them to also be curious with what they're feeling. And it's like an extra step. It's like this 30-second or even like a 5-second pause before going into the depths of it all, which has been really helpful. And as a highly sensitive parent on the other end, like I get very overstimulated really quickly. So whether I'm touched out or if there's too much noise, and I've got two boys who are always screaming, but not like bad screaming. They're always just playing and screaming and then there's also a dog in the mix of it, and now we have a baby, and then Nick's also trying to talk to me, ask me, what are we having for supper? What are we doing? And then at the end
Pineapple.
of it, yeah,
Then we just use the safe word pineapple, and
yeah.
she runs into the room. I'm gone. I'm done.
No. So that was an extremely helpful practice for me to learn that I can step out, that the world is not going to burn if I just go into my room for 5
Yeah.
minutes, put on my white noise, or just like put something on where I can just bring myself to a space where I can think and be calm instead of just reacting.
And then you can be more effective in your approach.
And
And that's worked really well, to be honest with you. Just that thing of having a safe word, like, I can't do the parenting thing right now. I need to go step out and go do my own thing. And many a time I find that when you've been able to do that, or if I've called you out and said you probably need to step back,
well, you don't say that, you're just like pineapple.
and pineapple and leave. I find that I'm in a way more, balanced and firm, empowered space to help navigate that situation. And I don't want to say necessarily take control, but create that boundary in the framework where whatever was going to turn into more chaos is able to come down, and the kids are able to regulate themselves.
But it's because we worked as a team.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with parenting, is having a partner that's on the same page as you, which makes things massively easier, because he holds me accountable just as I hold him accountable and myself accountable. And that is so helpful versus the other thing. But I wanted to say, on what you were saying about dealing with kids who have a different temperament than what people would regard as like easy kids, the unicorn children who just sit and they're so placid and all these things, and they sleep. It was so interesting reflecting back on a conversation that I had with my brother and my parents, and our kids were listening to that. And I can't really remember the entire conversation, but what I do remember was that my mom was saying that, your father wishes that he was harder on all of you, and my brother said, I don't know if I could bring kids into the world being as hard on them as you guys were on us. And my oldest was like, he asked me a couple of days after that, he was like, oh, what did that mean? Like, what did that look like for you guys? And I was trying to explain it to him. And I remember after that, just reflecting back on it. And it was a thing of, I don't understand like why we have this thing that's been ingrained within parenting, that you have to break a child's spirit in order, like you have to break them in, like you have to
fix them, to make
to
sure that they're going to be a good, pliable
person
adult.
of the world. And it's not that, it's like, it's almost like this loss of the humanness within them. There's this like
That
the
spark.
innocence, the childlike nature that's just, you try and break it out of them. The harder you are on them, the more difficult you make it for them, the more they'll be a better person, is the belief, I think.
It'll make them stronger.
Yeah, and it's not. It's not. I mean, I've spent my adulthood trying to heal from my childhood, which is, I think, what a lot of parents now are facing.
And just to add to that, I think, this being such an interesting space, because you're dealing obviously with parents and kids, but mostly the parents, and we're dealing with people that want to work on themselves, and then it ends up coming back to parenting and childhood trauma, or just experiences, and the root cause behind why they are driven in the way that they are. I find that it's really interesting how full circle this work is, because it's self-applicable. It's not your kids that are the problem, it's you.
Yeah.
And it's how you're seeing your kids, and more importantly, seeing yourself.
Yeah.
At the end of the
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, in light of all of that, how do you find ways that you can not just endure motherhood, because that's something that very rarely do I hear people happy within motherhood. There's the thing of like, oh, you know what, we just continue, we go with it, or there's the mindset of you have to endure it and move through it, and that's not something that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to find ways to enjoy it, because it's such a big part. You are your kid's childhood. So how do you find ways that you as a parent can enjoy parenting?
Yeah, I think it starts with what I believe it is making sure that your own emotional and physical needs are met. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say emotional, that also means like bringing joy into your life.
Yeah.
We often struggle with joy. We often struggle with emotional regulation. We often struggle with self-compassion and self-care. Um,
Mm.
and so being like unapologetic about this is what I love and I'm going to have it in my life is really, I believe, the only way that we get through motherhood. Because I remember thinking, oh man, this could be a miserable 18 years, or I could learn how to get through it and how to get through it happy. Because ultimately, the science shows that children thrive when their mother thrives. Okay.
Mm.
And when you think about just how much influence we have, that is so true.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you can view it that you're actually doing your child a favor by
Mm-hmm.
enjoying your life and finding things that make you happy, even if it's little things. Like I take mum breaks, and while
Mm-hmm.
it's time for my it took time for my kids to um, learn that when I was on a mum break, I was not available. Okay. And so I had to end up saying to them multiple times, I'm on a mum break right now. And that means for 10 minutes, I'm not available. And I would obviously try and set up activities so that I could get an uninterrupted break.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's not always possible because kids are unpredictable, obviously. And I use that time to do something that's actually refreshing. I could spend my time scrolling, but that's not going to make me feel any better. That's not going to make me happy. And therefore, the things that actually make me happy are reading, or, in the summer we get one of those pools just from the shop, and like diving in there. And there are times where I'll go in the pool and I'll be like, you can't come. I'm going in, okay? And after my 10 or 15 minutes, I would love for you to join me. But I am going to lie in this pool and just feel free by myself. And then once that's done, I will happily have you come and play. Right. And so it's like, it's really putting your needs first and not feeling bad about it. And the one thing that about if you can embrace that, what I've found is that when your child puts their needs first, you are more open to embracing their needs as well.
Mm.
And then there's that boundary component, and I think that mutual respect. Like, I'm not just seeing you as a kid, I'm seeing you as an individual, as a person.
Yeah.
And we see each other slightly differently, but that respect is there, and that recognition. I love that.
And
I love that.
also, I mean, if you think about like what you're modeling to your kids, you are the first human that they are experiencing,
Yeah.
and you are showing them not by what you're saying, but by what you're doing. Um, you're showing them what it means to be a whole, healthy, and happy human. In your relationships, you're also showing them what it means to love and be loved. And like, does this love feel safe? Does it feel good? Like, all of those things are being communicated, not by, it's not do as I say, it's do as I do. You know? So I think one of the biggest shifts for me in our family dynamic has been just I think I'm not someone that can compartmentalize to the same degree. So if there's something happening within like our partnership space, it's like my whole, like everything within parenthood is being affected. Or if there's something happening with the kids, and like our partnership is being affected as well. And so just having that sense of like, the support and the strategies, and just having like something feel easier now that we know what to do, or have some pathway of what to do, has been massive for us within like the dynamic of our relationship. And it's almost like there's a sense of ease that we've witnessed within the kids, because they're like, oh, okay, this is who you are when you're not like reactive. This is who you are, and this is how you are towards each other when you're not doing those what we used to like our go-to patterns. And I find within parenting, there's a thing of, it's like this, it's a thing of like, this is, I'm actually having to grow up, because you have to let go of that sense of carelessness, especially when you want to parent like well. Parenting is easy if you don't want to parent well.
Yeah.
And by that, what I mean is just that notion of thinking about what you're doing, taking responsibility for your actions. It takes time to like develop that within your mind and in your nervous system. And I'm still like actively working on it. I don't get it right most days, but it is better than what I've done. And I just wanted to ask, how within your relationships, with your partner or your husband or whoever, if how do you find ways to still be yourselves, or like connect to each other, because like I miss you in the in the thick of the parenting, especially now that we have a third one. It's like,
And then I've got a follow-up question to that. The second part would be, from your perspective, how, and this goes into that and the question before, and in terms of enjoying parenting and motherhood, how can, in a more of a traditional, familial setup, how can the man in the relationship be more supportive to allow for the mother to nurture and care for the kids, and to fill up and really turn the house into a home, like keep that spark alive as well? And I think that does tie into the relationship question, but however you interpret it, we'd love to just hear your views on that.
Yeah, and I think for the first part of that question, I believe like our relationships come down to whether we are going to either turn away from our partner or turn towards our partner, right? So there's two ways that we can, when we're under some pretty heavy stress and our partner walks in the door, they've been at work all day or wherever they've been, if we're going to turn away from them, that would look like disconnection. That might look like, just go and do this, or like kind of blaming them or lashing out at them. Okay. The opposite though is turning into them, and that might look like turning around and being like, oh, thank goodness you're home, I need a hug, please help, and giving them a hug and be like, oh, today's been so hard, oh my goodness. And and once you know that, and when you hear those words, or you hear how their day has been, there's no competition there. Like there's no like, my day's harder or it's harder doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, you know what? Let's need each other. Let's turn towards each other, and then let's be a teammate. What do we need? If I can rely on you to put my needs, my emotional needs high on your priority list, and you can rely on me to do the same, then we've always got each other's back, right? We're always supportive. We can step into, okay, you do this and I'll do that. And it happened for me just yesterday. I had an afternoon where I had the my stepdaughters and my daughter, and they were just fighting all afternoon. I was pulling my hair out. They were antagonizing each other. They were hitting. I was like, when my partner came in and I literally looked at him and I was like, it's my turn to cry. I just burst into tears, and the girls had all cried like 3 times each, and I was like overwhelmed. And just like fell into his arms and was like, oh my goodness, this has been so hard. It was just like, okay, let's take a breath, let's go outside, we'll turn the TV on, we'll keep them distracted. Okay. And it was just 10 minutes of being outside of going, oh my goodness, I need to breathe. And then after I was able to come to that calm space, I was like, and how was your day? Yeah. And from there, the goal is, how do we get to bedtime without losing it? Right. And just to me, it's you do this and I do this. And every time we find it hard, we're going to look at each other and like maybe run outside for 5 minutes or whatever it is, and when the kids were eating their dinner, he was like, hey, you step out, I've got this, right? And I went and sat outside just by myself. And yeah, I think just knowing that both roles are different in the household, but they're still equally as important.
I love that, because I mean, just using that example there, your partner is there supporting you and making sure that you've got some time to fill up your cup, because you've just been pouring into the kids the whole day and just trying to keep things moving at some points. just to get by, you just want to get to bedtime. That's the deadline. If you can get there, it's been successful if everyone's bathed or fed and sleeping
and loved. It was so funny because the other day, Nick and I, in the morning, she hasn't been sleeping. She's got that 4-month sleep regression. So, and she's just up chatting and smiling, and it's so cute. I can't say, go to sleep, So I'm just up with her, and Nick he's working so intensely during the day. And because right now, obviously, I've chosen not to take on any clients and anything. And so there was one day that we just came to each other. I was like, I don't know how you do what you do. And Nick was like, I don't know how you do what you do. I would never be able to do that. Yeah. And so it was just the thing of like, I'll see you at the end of your mountain. I love you. But like we're all on our own mountains right now.
Yeah. And then we walk down the passage into the sunset separately.
Yeah. But no, it's so true what you're saying. But I mean, and in terms of the second part of Nick's question, which was like, how does the dad like pour into mom so that she's able to pour into the kids more, was a dynamic that we didn't understand, especially in the beginning of our relationship. And it's an interesting one because
it's also, sorry to interrupt you, it's also just that whole provider idea that men have, that's the bare minimum and that's what you're supposed to do. Just provide. And then it's like, okay, now I've done my thing, like everything else, like you take care of that. Please also share what you read on Reddit yesterday. Just for context,
that
this
was like shocking to me, because there's a man who asked a question about, my wife just had a baby a week ago and she's not cleaning or doing the dishes. And I like, obviously, like my eyes are rolling right now because, I don't believe that that's like one person's responsibility. So, and his question was like, how do I, should I be helping her, or like, what should I do, was the question. And the responses were shocking. So the second most liked one was, like, just find ways to not do it. Just say that you're tired or all of those things, because she should be doing it. That's her role and responsibility. The most liked one was, I do the things. I do help her. When she asks me to do it, I make the bottle. I do the things. But I make the bottle too hot or too cold, and then the baby's crying. Or I always break a glass when she asks me to do the dishes. And it's that, what do they call it? I can't think of the word. There's a term. That's it. Weaponizing competence, and that was the most liked response. And in the beginning of our relationship, that was Nick's also like go-to thing, because that's what his friends communicated. That's what all of the people around him said. Like, and it was such a big like. I was angry for a long time because of it, but it's that like just going back to taking responsibility for yourself, your actions, your choices, and what you're modeling to your kids, and that's what shifted things for you. But how would you? What was your question with that?
No, it's just in terms of you're looking at a partnership, and both roles are like really important at the end of the day. I think if I do verbalize it or turn it into a question, how do you go about addressing maybe a situation like that, let's say, where you have, the mother that's doing her absolute best. She's trying to tick all the boxes. The partner's ticking the absolute basics. So there's like, let's say, financial security. He's there in person, and he does like the absolute bare minimum, but it's the emotional component isn't there. Maybe there's a thing of just, I'm too tired, I can't do this, or this, I have the expectation that you have to do X, Y, and Z. How would you go about just maybe starting a conversation around that, where things can maybe be addressed, and just maybe a process, or helping individuals navigate that in their relationship?
I think the way that I would approach that is, first you have to ask yourself, do you and your partner have the same values? For example, if someone got into marriage to just financially provide, was there a conversation that beforehand that was going to be the expectation? It's so strong. It's so strong in me, like this place where we keep trying to push these relationships when you've got two different people with two different values, wanting two different paths and two different lives, and they're in a relationship together. Ultimately, you have to come down and have the conversation and say, this is what I want. What do you want? You have to know what is most important to you, and go into it with the mindset that if this person is not willing to be that, then you can either spend your whole life fighting for it and probably be severely let down, or you guys can meet in the middle and say, hey, I want to be with you, you want to be with me, let's try and match our values and see what is most important. Because you're never going to find someone who is 100%, but you do want to find someone where you have the same goals, that you're in this as a partnership. It's not like we're married but we're separate, right? And so we go into it, and whenever you have these conversations, the way that I always start the conversation is with connection, right? If I know I have to have a difficult conversation with my partner for a couple of days beforehand, or even a few hours beforehand, I will up that connection. I will be flirty, I will be fun, I'll be happy, I'll be like complimenting them, because I know that that conversation is going to go easier when they feel better, right? When they feel connected to you, you're going to want to please the other person. Okay, so we have to up the connection. Then we get to have common ground, like, why are you initiating this conversation? How is it of benefit to them to have this conversation? For example, it might be, I really want us to be more united. I really think that our family will be stronger if we can come to an agreement around this area. I want to feel closer to you. Why are you initiating the conversation? What is the outcome that you're hoping for? Right. And then we go into, how do we consider their point of view and collaborate together? And both of you have to be considerate to what the other person wants. This is a two-way thing. Okay. And then finally, it is making sure that if there is any tension or there's any like that you feel your emotions escalating, that you take a break until you're calm. Right, so there's like 4 or 5 C words there: connection, calm, collaboration, consideration, and common ground. And that's how you have a really good conversation. And also using language that doesn't blame, but instead acknowledges how you feel. So instead of, you do this, it is, I feel really let down when this happens. Okay, and we take the criticism out of it. Instead, we're putting in encouragement. I know that you're so great at this, because when you do it, I feel so loved. Right, that is so much easier to digest than, you don't love me. No, that's not, we can't bring out accusations, because it just puts everyone's walls up.
100%.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
100%. I think it's just easier to gentle parent everyone around us as well.
You're setting yourself up for success with that approach. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that we had, I suppose this ties in, but not with your direct relationship, but how do you balance or handle difficult relationships with grandparents specifically, in terms of just the perspective that you're holding in terms of just how you're parenting and how you're raising your kids? Because normally there's two very different
schools of thought.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of people, especially millennial parents, are now going no contact, because they've realized, like, oh, actually, like, what I went through is not okay. And their parents are not wanting to take accountability or responsibility. And that's the reason why a lot of us have gone no or low contact with them. And so it's interesting, because grandparents feel like they owed relationships with the kids. And so how do you navigate that, where they feel like they owed time with them, but you also don't want to take away a relationship like that, but parents or grandparents are continuously like disrespectful or of boundaries, or to the parents themselves? How would you navigate that?
And the parenting approach.
Yeah. So I don't believe that anyone is owed a relationship with your child. The mindset that we have to also have is that our parents had their time parenting. They got to do whatever they wanted, and they chose their path. And I believe that in a healthy adult-child relationship, a parent lets go around 18 to 21. You should be hands off and allowing your child to make their own decisions and face the natural consequences that come with that decision. Okay. And so therefore, if your parent is still trying to control your decisions and you're 25, 30, whatever it is, you have to recognize that there's some element there that is completely unhealthy. It's also very hard when you've been raised in that kind of enmeshment where, like, family comes first, right? And they believe, because they're at the head of the family, they're the oldest, or they are, the elders, that they are entitled to certain things. But your responsibility as a parent is no longer to your parent, right? Your responsibility is to your child. And in 20 years' time, when your child is 20, 30, whatever it is, and they turn to you and they say, why did you do that? Are you going to have the answers for them? Are you going to be able to stand up and say, I did that because I thought it was what was best, because that was really authentic, because this is how I wanted to parent? Or are you going to say, I did that because that was what I was taught by my parents? One is quite cowardly, and the other is like, hey, I really thought this is what was best for you, right? And you get to choose which path you go down.
That was so beautifully verbalized. Thank you.
Your kids are going to find out who you are, and you need to make sure that it's someone that you like, that looking in the mirror and facing. And so in our closing, just thank you so much for your time and for your expertise and all of the tools and everything that you've shared here. This has been incredible, and I know that there's so many people that are going to find this so incredibly helpful. And this is why we have a parenting coach, guys, because when you don't know what to do, someone else knows what to do.
So you know what to do.
Yeah. I wanted to ask just the last little one, which is just like what is something that you repeat as like a mantra for yourself, or does that shift for you every day just to like keep yourself in check? Like, as you go throughout the day, is there something that you reach for all the time? Because for me, like my go-to is like, I'm safe within my space. Like my kids are not the enemy. Like it's, we can like, let's find ways to have fun with us, So what is yours?
My go-to in like moments that are hard is, this is hard and I can do hard things.
I like that.
My first one. And then if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, it's very similar to yours. I'm safe. I can step outside and trying to be really solution focused as opposed to being stuck in the problem.
I like that. And Annaliese, for anyone that is wanting to find you, where can they find you? How can they work with you? How can they get hold of you?
So I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram under Annaliese Erin Parent Coach. You can just send me a message. That's probably the best way. And if you go to my link, which is in my profile in each of those social media accounts, there is a form that you can fill out if you want to work together.
Perfect. And we'll also just make sure that your details are in the podcast description as well, so everyone can easily access you and get hold of you if they resonate. But Annaliese, genuinely just thank you from the bottom of my heart, and for what you've done for us, and just for sharing your wisdom and your time with us today. It's deeply appreciated, and I trust that the people listening, they have a few golden nuggets to take with them and hopefully implement in their lives moving forward. It can just ease their parenting journey just a little bit.
Totally. And thank you so much for having me. And it's been great working with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Annaliese. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And we deeply appreciate the support. If this is something that resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for taking the time to pour into yourself today and to fill up your cup. And that's one of our philosophies. Just, you cannot go around with this empty cup. You need to fill it up so you can overflow into the lives of others. And by you choosing to do that, you end up being this ripple of change. And if you feel called to take some extra care, learn a few more things about yourself, then check out our resources on our website. We have a 5-part series, as mentioned before, as well as a whole list of blog posts, podcasts, where you can dive in and learn from all things plant medicine, performance, parenting, relationships, and more. And lastly, if you feel called to work with us at this moment in time, please feel free to reach out and just follow the prompts on the website under private coaching. That being said, you have this innate potential within you, and every time you choose to value yourself, put yourself first, and to take that leap of faith, you are making the shift. Have a beautiful day.